Good morning, reading room. How are you? Oh, you know what? I'm not ready. Ha ha ha. Hold on. I have to go get my glasses. We are here in the reading room, though, and we are going to be reading today, this morning, continuing on from Ethics for the New Millennium from His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. And I just was tired yesterday, and so I'm listening to my body. And I'm listening to my spirit, and I'm watching those damn neighbors. It is, I believe I turned it. Yeah, it's October 25th, folks. And it's a cloudy day today. It's a cloudy day, so we can't have our sunshine up there. But we are still on day 164. No matter, we're still on day 164 of the classroom. We can see, because we can see outside without that glare. It's a cloudy day. Now let me go get my glasses. Stop bothering me so much. Hold on. There we were. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. We were on chapter 14, I believe. Yeah, chapter 14 on peace and disarmament. If you remember, what he's doing is he's giving us the lowdown on what we might be able to do, starting with media, education and media, to make this a much better place. So, giving you advice in the areas of education and media, the natural world, politics and economics, and now peace and disarmament. And this was a longer chapter, so I'm going to keep going. The emergence of such regional security groupings would, I feel, contribute enormously to the transition from our current preoccupation with nation states to the gradual acceptance of less narrowly defined communities. They could also pave the way for a world in which there would be no standing armies at all. Such a scenario would, of course, have to evolve in stages. National armed forces would give way to regional security groupings. These could then gradually be disbanded, leaving only a globally administered police force. The main purpose of this force would be to safeguard justice, communal security, and human rights worldwide. Its specific duties would be various, however. Protecting against the appropriation of power by violent means would be one of them. Oh my gosh. You know, it's not saying that we get rid of law enforcement, but if there is a person out here who believes that law enforcement doesn't really need some severe improvement, the justice system doesn't need some severe improvement, you haven't been paying attention. Look what happened to those super PACs. And you know, look what happened to those super PACs. And I'm going to tell you something. Hillary Clinton took back her request because the justice system so perverted her request to put out a commercial within the 30 days before the election. Crazy incredible. So its specific duties would be various, however. Protecting against the appropriation of power by violent means would be one of them. As to its operation, granted, there are legal issues to be tackled first, but I imagine that it would be called in either by communities which came under threat from neighbors or from some of its own members, such as violently extreme political faction, or it would be deployed by the international community itself when violence seemed the likely outcome of conflict. For example, of religious or ideological dispute. Even though it is true that we remain a long way from this ideal situation, again, it is not so fanciful as it may at first seem. Maybe this generation will not live to see it, but we are already accustomed to seeing, United Nations troops deployed as peacekeepers. Do the United Nations want to step in? Is that what's going on here? We are also beginning to see the emergence of a consensus that under certain circumstances, it may be justifiable to use them in a more interventionist way. Oh my gosh, the United States is getting an intervention from the international community. You go, international community, you go. As a means for furthering these developments, we might consider the establishment of what I call zones of peace. Here I imagine either a part or parts of one or more country being demilitarized to create oases of stability, preferably in areas of strategic significance. Here I imagine either, these would serve as beacons of hope for the rest of the world. Admittedly, this idea is quite ambitious, but it is not without precedent. We already have one such internationally recognized demilitarized zone in Antarctica, nor am I the only individual ever to suggest there could be more. Former Russian President Mikhail Gorbachev proposed just such status for the Sino-Russian borderlands. I myself have advanced the idea for Tibet. It does take some thinking, doesn't it? That's the reason why. All right, let me keep reading. I know. It's a book about ethics for the new millennium, and it's like I'm on the edge of my seat. I swear to God, I told my husband that. Oh, dear Jesus, I hope you're okay. Of course, it is not hard to think of areas in the world other than Tibet where neighboring communities would benefit enormously from the establishment of a demilitarized zone, just as India and China, both of them still relatively poor countries, would save a considerable proportion of their respective annual income if Tibet were to become an internationally recognized zone of peace. So there are many others on each continent from which a tremendous wasteful burden would be lifted if there were no need to maintain large numbers of troops on their borders. Oh, I have often thought, for example, that Germany is a most appropriate location for a zone of peace, lying as it does in the heart of Europe and taking into account the experience of the 20th century's 2 world wars. What? Demilitarizing Germany as a big middle finger to them? What? Are you getting this? Because I am. And again, I'm on the edge of my seat. Thank you, Dalai Lama. What? Ah! In all this, I believe the United Nations has a critical role to play. Not that it is the only body devoted to global issues. There is also much to admire about the idea behind the International Court at The Hague, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and others such as those dedicated to upholding the Geneva Conventions. Oh my gosh. What? I read this plan. I forgot about it. Then I went on my merry way. What? Ah! But at present, and I swear to gosh, this was my reaction. This was my reaction when I read it with my husband. I swear to gosh. Oh, it's interesting because, yeah, okay, never mind. But at the present and for the conceivable future, the United Nations is the only global institution capable of both influencing and formulating policy on behalf of the international community. And oh, lo and behold, we pay more money than anybody else does. Why is that? Who would want to influence the United Nations about their policies? Shh. Of course, many people criticize it on the grounds that it is ineffective, and it is true that time and again we have seen its resolutions ignored, abandoned, and forgotten. Nevertheless, in spite of these shortcomings, I, for one, continue to have the highest regard, not only for the principles on which it was founded, but also for the great deal it has achieved since its inception in 1945, right? After World War II, 1946, Israel becomes a nation. And Israel, what? Becomes a nation to be the most militarized, part of the most militarized zone on the planet. I remember just being like this when I read this, like, oh my gosh, honest to God. Okay, it does take some brains to put all this together. I've been putting it together for 20 years. It's like I knew it, and then it broke down into worker bees. We had to be worker bees. We had to be worker bees to get this done. Oh my gosh, I'm fisting all the people that, not in that sexual trafficking kind of way either. Okay, we need only ask ourselves. See, this is what you miss by the end of the day, reading room. You miss the energy I start with. We need only ask ourselves whether or not it has helped save lives through diffusing potentially disastrous situations to see that it is more than the toothless bureaucracy some people say it is. Oh, see what you miss, reading room? This is why I have reading room at the end of the day. Anyone else who's ever been in reading room, this is why I have reading room at the end of the day. It's because it's a time for me to sit and calm down and not put in my 2 cents. I told you when I started reading this book, I told you I was going to put in my 2 cents, but nobody knew it was going to be like this, did you? 8:30 in the morning on a Friday. Who could predict in her jailhouse rock outfit? Okay. Nevertheless, in spite of these shortcomings, I, for one, continue to have the highest regard, not only for the principles on which it was founded, but also for the great deal it has achieved since its inception in 1945. We only need to ask ourselves whether or not it has helped save lives through diffusing potentially disastrous situations to see that it is more than the toothless bureaucracy some people say it is. Wow. I know I just read it. I get it. I was still on the other thought, as you can see. We should also consider the great work of its subsidiary organizations such as UNICEF, United Nations High Commission for Refugees, UNESCO, and the World Health Organization. This remains true even if some of their programs and policies and those of other world organizations have been flawed and misguided. All you've got to do is, first of all, follow the money. There you go. And the gold and the weaponry. I see the United Nations, if it could be developed to its full potential, as being the proper vehicle for carrying out the wishes of humanity as a whole. As yet, it is not able to do this very effectively, but then we are only just beginning to see the emergence of a global consciousness, which has been made possible by the communications revolution. And in spite of tremendous difficulties, we have seen it in action in numerous parts of the world, even though at the moment there may only be 1 or 2 nations spearheading these initiatives. The fact that they are seeking the legitimacy conferred by a United Nations mandate suggests a felt need for justification through collective approbation. This, in turn, I believe to be indicative of a growing sense of a single, mutually dependent human community. One of the particular weaknesses of the United Nations as it is presently constituted is that although it provides a forum for individual governments, individual citizens cannot be heard there. It has no mechanism whereby those wishing to speak out against their own governments can be heard. To make matters worse is the fact that the veto system currently in place opens its workings to manipulation by the more powerful nations. These are profound shortcomings. As to the problem of individuals not having a voice, here, I swear to God, I had my sister read this chapter and I was like, this is what we need to do. And that's when things began to fall apart. I have 2 more pages to get through and I'm going to get through them. I see the United Nations, if it could be developed to its full potential, as being the proper vehicle for carrying out the wishes of humanity as a whole. As yet, it is not able to do this very effectively. But then we are only just beginning to see the emergence of a global consciousness, which has been made possible by the communications revolution. And in spite of tremendous difficulties, we have seen it in action in numerous parts of the world, even though at the moment there may only be 1 or 2 nations spearheading these initiatives. The fact that they are seeking the legitimacy conferred by a United Nations mandate suggests a felt need for justification through collective approbation. This, in turn, I believe to be indicative of a growing sense of a single, mutually dependent human community. One of the particular weaknesses of the United Nations as it is presently constituted is that although it provides a forum for individual governments, individual citizens cannot be heard there. It has no mechanism whereby those wishing to speak out against their own government can be heard. To make matters worse is the fact that the veto system currently in place opens its workings to manipulation by the more powerful nations. These are profound shortcomings. As to the problem of individuals not having a voice, here we might have to consider something more radical. Just as democracy is ensured by the 3 pillars of an independent judiciary, executive, and legislature, so we need to have a genuinely independent body at the international level. But perhaps the United Nations is not entirely suited to this role. I have noticed at international gatherings such as the Earth Summit in Brazil that individuals representing their country inevitably put their nation's interests first, despite the fact that the question at issue transcends national boundaries. Conversely, when people come as individuals to international gatherings, here I am thinking of such groups as the International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War Group, or the Initiative on the Arms Trade by the Nobel Peace Laureates, of which I am a member, there is much greater concern for humanity itself. Their spirit is much more genuinely international and open. This leads me to think that it could be worthwhile to establish a body whose principal task is to monitor human affairs from the perspective of ethics. Right on, brother, right on. An organization that might be called the World Council of the People, although no doubt a better name could be found. This would consist in a group of individuals drawn, as I imagine it, from a wide variety of backgrounds. There would be artists, bankers, environmentalists, lawyers, poets, academics, religious thinkers, and writers, as well as ordinary men and women with a common reputation for integrity and dedication to fundamental ethical and human values. Because this body would not actually be invested with political power, its pronouncements would not be legally binding, but by virtue of its independence, having no link with any one nation or group of nations and no ideology, these deliberations would represent the conscience of the world. They would thus carry moral authority. Of course, there will be many who criticize this proposal, along with what I have said about military disestablishment, disarmament, and reform of the United Nations. Welcome to Michigan. on the grounds that it is unrealistic or perhaps just too simplistic, or they will say that it is not workable in the real world. But while people are often content to just criticize and blame others for what goes wrong, surely we should at least attempt to put forward constructive ideas. One thing is for certain: given human beings' love of truth, justice, peace, and freedom, creating a better, more compassionate world is a genuine possibility. The potential is there if, with the help of education and the proper use of the media, we can combine some of the initiatives suggested here with the implementation of ethical principles. We will have within our reach a climate in which disarmament and military disestablishment become totally uncontroversial. On the basis of this, we will have created the conditions for lasting world peace. Oh my gosh, I just want to bathe in that. I swear to gosh, it just makes me, I swear to gosh, I said that to my husband. It just almost makes you want to take a shower because you feel so GD dirty being part of this system that has created this. This is Dr. Annette Feravich. That was chapter 14 of our book by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Ethics for the New Millennium. Yeah. I don't know. It's interesting. Okay. All right. That's it. We're done with the reading room. Or you could sit here and watch me think. This is Dr. Annette Feravich. We have just successfully completed day 164. We did it on October 25th, early in the morning, or at least earlier in the morning than what you're used to. Thanks for joining me here, Reading Room. This is Dr. Annette Feravich, as I am making the world a healthier place. Thanks.